welcome again to another program of Searching for Answers. This evening we are continuing in the book of Revelation, and I'd like to read something that I have printed out here. It says, Christ the Revelator, foreseeing the warfare that would be waged against the study of the Revelation, pronounced a blessing upon all who should read, hear, and observe the words of the prophecy. That's from Great Chronoversary, pages 341 and 342. So this evening we have some delightful guests that are going to help us to understand not only every verse, but every word. I'm Carolyn Thompson, and on my right,
I'm Gerald Winslow. I teach religion at Loma Linda University.
John Jones, the School of Religion at La Sierra University.
John Brunt, pastor of the Azure Hills Church.
Ivan Blazin, on the Faculty of Religion at Loma Linda University.
This evening we're in the book of Revelation, chapter 13, just finishing up. And I'm going to ask my colleague here to review what we've been talking about. John?
Well, we have been spending some time, haven't we?
Yes,
in 13.
we have.
We've been there for a while. But that's because it is not only so important and so meaningful for us today, but also because it's such a rich text. It's just loaded with all kinds of interesting symbolism and significance. So here we are, a chapter that divides itself, in a way, right down the middle, in two main sections. In that first section, where we saw the great dragon pause on the shore of the sea, and purposefully, it seems, looking out over the waves, as if in anticipation or even summoning this horrific, nondescript figure that has about it all of the features of the various elements and animals we saw back in Daniel. Yeah? Here is a conglomeration of all of the powers of the earth, so to speak, now coming, it's as if the whole thing were coming to a head in some way, isn't it? Huh? And so now this head, one of them seems to sustain a mortal wound. That wound is healed in some sense. And then everybody is astonished and marvels at this beast and wonders after it. And it has authority. It is given power to exercise over the various tribes and nations and kindred of the earth, and all who dwell on the earth, in fact, worship this beast, we read in verse 8. So then comes that solemn kind of pronouncement, whoever has an ear to hear, and I think it means to hear and understand.
Yes, I do too.
Get it, yeah? If anyone is taken captive, to captivity he goes. If anyone slays with the sword he must be slain. But here now is nonetheless a call for the saints' patience and endurance and for their faith. With that scene kind of stands there, doesn't it? We have that before us, and now we turn our attention, beginning in verse 11, to yet another beast, which is also still, in some curious way, a front for the dragon. The dragon is the puppeteer, isn't it? Huh?
Yes.
Back here pulling the strings. Yes. And here are these various manipulations. Tonight, this part of the chapter we look at is a revelation of this second beast, the two-horned one. Comes forth from the earth, seems peaceable enough, doesn't it? And we noticed last time, just in getting into this, that it seems somehow to share characteristic features with the Lamb that was slain from the foundation of the world. It too has several heads and horns, and much like this. But the counterfeit is close enough to the original that people are somehow easily deceived until it speaks. It speaks with the voice of a dragon. And that part I think we'll want to pick up on a little bit this evening, move ahead, and then get on into chapter 14. With that in mind, then, I think we can make our beginning with verses 11, 12, 13, and following to kind of roll up our sleeves and wade back into it one more time this evening.
Well, thank you, John. That's great. Now, just by way of review, who's the dragon?
Well, I think it's Satan, huh?
Lucifer, Satan, that's right.
Say it boldly.
Say it boldly.
Well, I just don't want to give away the answer, so
Yeah.
really, I'm humble about it.
Yes, that's right.
And all of the forces of evil in the universe
That's right.
somehow capitulate in here, caught up in it, don't they?
Okay, let's see, there's a dragon that comes out
First
of the
beast.
water.
Well, the dragon's waiting by the water for
Okay,
the
and
beast.
what's the next one?
There's the beast that
Beast.
comes
Now,
out.
who's the beast? Is that the Roman Empire in John's time?
There seems little doubt that that's,
Yeah.
in John's time, who that you couldn't miss it.
Yes, okay. And then the lamb, who, is, as John pointed out, kind of speaks in nice terms, but then we find out it's a counterfeit. Is that correct?
Well, it's
All right.
like you can't help but think about this second one because it's like a lamb, right, with two horns.
Yes,
Now, Jesus has been pictured as a lamb,
yes.
so this is a parody of Jesus, of the Christ, you know.
It's it says it's a beast right at the beginning, and I saw another beast, but it had two horns like a lamb. It's let's say, pretending a bit to be like
Yes.
a lamb.
And all
That's a
through
good point.
history,
That's
haven't we
interesting.
found that all through history, Satan always inserts a counterfeit to lead people astray?
And he also works through lots of different kinds of powers. He doesn't just come at us directly, he comes at us indirectly through various powers. The Roman power, then this second land power.
You know,
a sea
Ivan,
power and a land power.
that's right, and that's important. That's an important distinction between these two. Clearly here, the first animal, which incorporates all of these features from Daniel of the various kingdoms, clearly we're dealing with earthly powers and kingdoms which may be very much against the people of God, may be really inimical, yeah? No bones about it. Authority, persecution. But here, now, beginning in verse 11 and the paragraph it's the second half of this chapter, now it's a very different picture. It's not a power that comes on persecuting, but rather working miracles, making the fire. It's as if, hey, I'm on your side. You know, don't worry about all that. That animal that came out of the sea. Here I am. Now, I'm on the other side.
But for
Isn't
the-
that interesting?
Yes, and for those, however, who know the traditions of the past,
Yeah.
then the sea beast is a symbol of the monster of chaos, or the monster of chaos is what is represented here, which is an evil power. The land beast, I mean, there are two beasts in Jewish writings. There are two beasts. There's a sea beast and there's a land beast. And there's Behemoth is, in some texts, like in Genesis, is the land beast, and Leviathan is the sea beast. And so, I mean, if you knew, though, they're going to be food for the righteous at the last day, they will be conquered. But if you knew those traditions and how they had gone along, then you would know that these two powers are no good.
And also it says, because of the signs he was given power to do, as you said, John, on behalf of the first beast, he deceived the inhabitants of the earth. So the whole earth is going to be taken in by the deceitfulness of this power.
So it turns out they're in cahoots after all.
They are.
Yeah, they're
in-
obviously in cahoots, and the second one is
Yes.
doing the work, carrying out the authority
Yes.
of the first, but in a deceptive way, and it seems to be in a religious way, where the first one seems more political, this one seems to have more
And a
religious
lamb. What
overtones.
could be sweeter than
Yes.
a lamb?
Well, and
But
calling
it's
for
a
worship.
lamb we don't want to trust.
It's a lamb that calls for worship,
Yes.
isn't it? I mean, what can be wrong with that?
Yeah.
Well, just exactly everything.
Now, some people, I don't know where we are for sure, which verse, Carolyn, but some people who are following along are going to want to know what these fine biblical scholars are going to do with verse 16. And I'm
Okay.
kind of curious to know that
All
myself.
right, you want to read
Have
that?
we talked? Well, it's this part where this beast that's done these miraculous
Yes.
things also forced everyone, small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on his right hand or on his forehead, so that no one could buy or sell unless he had the mark, which is the name of the beast or the number of his name. So it was, I'm just,
Okay, you
Well-
mean I couldn't go to the market and buy groceries,
well,
or
that's I don't know.
go to the gas station and fill up with gas. And what is this mark? Is it visible, or is it something that a belief system that everybody's deceived except a few people who see through all of this?
It's a rich opportunity to have three biblical scholars sitting here with us to ask this question.
We might mention that, and this is very well known, that Pliny, wasn't he the governor
Pliny,
of Bithynia?
yeah.
That's right.
He writes a letter to Trajan in the early part of the 2nd century, and he talks about, you know, certain kinds of tests that are administered to Christians. And one of them is to give an offering to the emperor. If they don't give this offering to the emperor in acknowledgement of the emperor's supremacy,
What was that offering?
well, it could be
A little-
incense, it
A
could
little
be,
pinch of incense?
yeah, that would be one of them, but it could
Okay.
be other kinds of things, some kind of votive offering.
Yes.
You kill those people. You can kill those people. And so we already get a feeling in the 2nd century of things that are already, that didn't just start there, that was already started.
Yes.
And what's going on here in John's own time. And we have to,
Do you think that people in the 1st century, as they read this, if they thought of Rome
yeah.
as the first beast, might not have seen the whole issue of emperor worship in this second beast? It seems that it would almost be hard to miss, because certainly that worship supported the first beast, the authority of Rome, and it was a way of social control under a religious guise.
That's
that
right.
you had to bow down and show observance to the emperor. Now, this was by no means something that you did exclusively. You know, all these people who gave their offerings and allegiance to the emperor in worship, they also worshipped everywhere else. And when you go through towns like Pompeii, you know, within a stone's throw, why, here's a temple to emperor worship, and here's another one to Isis, and here's another one to Apollo, and you know, you could make them all within 5 minutes. And so it wasn't that you just had to worship the emperor, it was just that you had to include the emperor among those that you gave
That's
worship
right.
to.
And I think we have to remember that this book wasn't written to the pagans. This book was written to Christians. So why was it written to Christians? Because of the incredible temptation it would be to say, look, how can we secure our livelihood except in some sense to throw in with the emperor, to give the impression that we're, you know, doing some homage to the emperor. And so it was very easy. And John is uncompromising. You cannot do this. You must not do this. Any compromise with emperor worship is out of the question for the Christian. You'll get enmeshed with it. No, it's, in fact, the next chapter, my, oh my, is going to bring some judgment pictures to our mind. John doesn't brook any rivals for the Lord Jesus Christ, you know? So,
Is it true that they marched in, like somebody said, I'll see you next Sunday in the Colosseum with the lions? If you didn't worship the emperor, even if you believe something else, if you just gave a little pigeon incense and then once a year, and then you were on your way. Believe anything you want, but just that little bit. So it would take a lot of knowing what you really believed in. I've read a little bit about some of this, and there was a lady, a young lady, she had a little baby. And yet she was being thrown to the lions. And her father said, just say a little word, just recant a little bit, you know. No, she says, for her Lord she would go. And so her servant girl, and you know who I'm talking about?
Is it Priscilla or Domitia?
I think it's one of those. Anyway, and they said that the Christians walked with peace on their face, willing to show their allegiance to Christ and what they stood for. And that all took place in about, 3.5 years or so? This sort of thing going on?
yeah, well, the thing about it is that emperor worship, see, that's in the 1st century. I remember that this book was written to the provinces of Asia Minor.
Yeah.
And these were the chief provinces where emperor worship was going on. Pergamos is the headquarters, but it's all over the place. But as far as the emperor is concerned and others, this is a way to have social cohesion. We must be united. How can we have a sector of people like these Christians not engaging in those practices that unite all of us together and make our livelihoods and our social welfare possible? So I bet you they had a very hard time with understanding Christians who wouldn't go in with this, and the Christians probably had a hard time, some of them, why we shouldn't go in with it.
And the very idea of exclusivism was just very much against the spirit of the age anyway. I mean, you have lots of philosophers who say, you know, we have, just like different cultures call the moon by different names and the sun by different names, we call these gods by different names, but the same thing is behind it all, and it really doesn't matter if you go to this temple and that temple. And so for Jews and for Christians to be so exclusive and say, we will worship only one, I mean, they called them atheists because
they didn't believe in
they
the gods.
didn't believe in the gods. And
they called it a superstition, too.
What
John?
Well, I want to get to, go ahead.
Go ahead.
John, go ahead, but I want to get to what your sense of the practical application of that is today. What difference would that make now? I was talking with a cousin of mine some time back, and he told me what it was like to grow up in Nazi Germany. He's a man who grew up in that very time, and at the age of, I think, 8 or 10, was coerced into being part of the Hitler Youth, it was called. And he remembers that you had to salute when Hitler came by. He saw them a number of times in Berlin, and he got bored with this, but you had to do it because people would observe whether you did or didn't, and if you didn't, that was taken to be a sign that you weren't on the team, so to speak, and you could end up in a bad place because of that. So that's one possible practical application where people might have drawn some courage from this and said, I'm not going to go along with that, even if it means a serious threat to myself personally.
Well, this is really religion in support of the state, isn't it?
Sure.
I mean, we have empire, which is supreme over everything, and religion is utilized to support empire.
Underneath the empire.
Underneath empire.
Not over.
You see, and so where do we have those situations? And I mean, you can recount various situations in the world where the religious authorities support the political authorities, and frankly, where apartheid has operated in this world, that's exactly what was going on. We could cite all kinds of instances of this. We probably have to look at ourselves, our own country. We have to look at the United States of America and ask in what way we may be falling for this kind of thing, involved in this kind of thing.
Apparently, some of these early Christians did, in fact, go along with the prevailing practice, because we know that later on, after persecution eased up, then there were rifts between Christians and Christians, between those who had cooperated and those who hadn't. So clearly, there was a dividing of the house on this, wasn't there?
there was even a rift between those who didn't over whether they should forgive those who did or not.
Yes,
Is that
was,
right?
Yeah, that was a big problem. And so
And what was the answer?
What was the answer? Yeah.
Well, they fought about it. I'm not sure there was a clear answer. It depended on whose side you were on.
What should have been the answer? I'm curious about that.
that we should forgive. But it's easy to sit here and say that. The fact of the matter is that in comparatively modern times, when we have had fellow believers in our own faith tradition or other Christian groups who have undergone a great deal of oppression in totalitarian states, when those states have eventually eased up or failed or whatever, you have that same kind of problem again, don't you? Between the brethren of the one school and of another school, those who kind of went along and cooperated, and those who stood firm and paid a high price. So there it is. I mean, the devil can divide the house in more ways than one, it seems. But what's so seductive for us today, since you ask about today, is that for us now, it looks in a country where there is some sense of uniformity in the general populace about the overall faith heritage in which we stand. What is now so seductive is that it's not so much religion against religion, but religion against an overarching pervasive culture in general that allows us to go to church on the weekend and then behave in really corrupt and oppressive ways during the week without sensing any kind of contradiction there. As if the rules only applied on the weekend and different rules applied during the weekdays. It is just as easy to prostitute ourselves, it seems to me, under that mode as in the form of one religion against another religion, because a popular civil religion has its own kind of grip on our lives today. That grip, as in ancient time as well, is in great degree an economic grip. And so we go along for the sake of our economic welfare and survival.
Do you think that's why it has the buy and sell
I
part?
do. Yes.
I remember Reinhold Niebuhr once saying that every nation has some pretension to divinity. Do you think that's true? I mean, would every nation in some sense stand under
Well,
this?
in Niebuhr, that's the human problem at the core, is that our own self-pride. I mean, individually, then corporately. And Niebuhr taught, of course, that nobody escapes that totally. So even when you feel you're on the right side and hope you're working for the right, you always have to look within and ask God for his forgiveness, because you may be participating in that kind of thing either individually or more nationally. And that gives us pause to really think, does it not?
Well, since you brought up his Reinhold Niebuhr's perceptions on these things, one thing I do remember him saying is about that is that very often when you combine political power with a sense of divine blessing, and so that you can make your political decisions always be as if God ordered them so, what you can do is take the individual inclination toward goodness, selflessness, a willingness to sacrifice, and move that into a kind of arrogance. You can, in other words, what starts out as a willingness to sacrifice for the good can, in fact, be turned into something that can be demonic, I guess you could say, here in this text. The take-home message for me would be, you probably should know what you believe, and you should be prepared to stick up for those beliefs, even if some very powerful forces in the whole society say otherwise.
And shouldn't we always be self-critical? Humility and the capacity to have self-criticism seems to me is absolutely essential, lest it get suddenly we cross over a line, imperceptibly crossing it. I think the gospel stands above politics and even our religions and calls us to things that really might judge both our politics and our religion. We always must be listening to the gospel again and again. We can't just ally ourselves with any one single earthly thing.
You know, sometimes these things can be very seductive, and maybe they're easier to see at a distance, both in terms of time and geography.
Sure.
Because I have relatives who live in Germany and who lived in Germany during the Hitler period. I can see how seductive that was. And I asked my cousin once, who was in the Hitler Youth, not only was he ordered to be there, but he said he wanted to be there. He was proud to be there. And I asked him why, and he said, well, we wanted to be good. We wanted to be the best.
Yes.
We wanted to excel. And when he said that, I thought of that line from Niebuhr. You take the inclination to be good, to be even self-sacrificial, to be heroic and give of yourself for your community. And if you meld that with an arrogant state that wants to take over divine power for itself, you can do terrible things to people. And it happened. And it's a lesson to me. I think it's a lesson to all of us to be careful about that. And not let anything come into the place that belongs only to God.
Well, that's the whole take-home message, isn't it? Not anything usurp God's place.
Last time we talked just briefly, we just touched lightly on this mysterious number 666
Yes.
at the
We
end.
just very
We kind of tiptoed around that, didn't we?
well, we didn't have enough time.
Of course.
We have plenty of time now.
Yes. Go ahead, John.
Well, I was just introducing it for the sake of others, but since you elbow me here, Carolyn, I'll say
Okay.
only this. First of all, that it is clearly a number of imperfection, isn't it? Because the sevens are the perfect numbers, aren't
Perfect
they?
numbers.
So there is at least that anyway. Furthermore, it seems to have to do with the things we've just been talking about the last few minutes. We know that they could play games with the alphabet and with numbers, and you can, if you're creative enough still today with names and mess with them enough, you can get almost anything to come out some one way or another. But nonetheless, this apparently had to do with an all-powerful government or state, totalitarian, lay claim to every aspect of our being. Secondly, it endorses itself with religious authority. Thirdly, in some way, Babylon seems to be associated with ideas of confusion. That's another element that we haven't talked much about. However, this all is to play out in our day. It's interesting to notice how we make up our own scenarios as we try to imagine the fulfillment. And within our own faith tradition, we've often thought that that may be something that would come from what we have in the past called apostate religion. We've even called it apostate Protestantism. And to be very explicit for a moment, we have assumed that that belonged to the Protestantism of the left, of the liberal side. But now, all of a sudden, we may find ourselves being blindsided from the other side, from the right.
Well, that leads to this.
And we've got just a minute left.
Oh, we only have a minute
Yeah.
left.
1 minute.
That
Let's
leads to
go
this
ahead.
next program.
But there is a real possibility that we wind up as the metaphor in the Old Testament prophets goes, not a prophecy, but a metaphor, of a man running away from a lion right into the jaws of a bear. And while we're looking to the left with such trepidation, we need to ask ourselves, is it possible that even people who represent the kind of religion we think we endorse, conservative, might somehow be infiltrating government in ways that reunite church and state, in ways that traditional Adventism has warned against and really guarded us against? We need to recover that traditional Adventist stance, I think.
You seem to be saying, John, if we have any seconds left at all, that maybe we're looking at one thing, when actually when you consider the Antichrist, you have to look, have to have a wide look, a wide spectrum. And I think we can trace that out, and that's for another time.
That's right. We only have about 15 seconds left. I really appreciate all that you've said, and hopefully our audience will understand a little bit better what 666 is. And we could go on studying that, as you know. And this is Carolyn Thompson for Searching for Answers. Until next time, we're going to be talking about the 144,000.